It's a Virginia cake. Been aged for quite some time now, like few years. Absolutely, the aroma is incredible.
I can imagine.
Hey, before we get going, I got to give a quick shout out to Oliver, because I picked me up some of this.
You're Virginia.
It is absolutely amazing. I just barely made this morning. I tried this at 11 o'clock last night, and I didn't get to bed until after 3:30 in the morning.
Wow.
That's a bit of an occupational hazard there, yes.
Fantastic Virginia, beautiful.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. So I bought 2 pounds of that. So just in case, to have it in my cellar. Yeah, it's really good stuff.
Hey, just want to let you know we're live over there on YouTube. So I want to give a shout out to the guys over there, Paul the Piper, Picking and Piping. Anyway, guys, remember over there on YouTube. I have them on the other screen, so I'm just assuming that if I look there, they'll be able to see me, right?
Yeah.
That you can join in the conversation by typing in questions over there, and I'll make sure we get it to the guest speaker. Or you can be one of the cool kids like these guys and join in the Zoom room.
David, this is Shep from Austin. Just want to say hello. Thank you for letting me in. Thank you for inviting me into the group.
Nice to meet you. I have to say that you would be welcome. I don't let anybody in. I'm pretty sure that they let me in. And that's how it actually works. And like, I think Oliver has got meetings going on behind my back during the middle of the week. He says, should we let him in again this Saturday? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, thank you anyway.
So far, I've been
look
lucky.
forward. I'll listen to the experts.
It's very nice to meet you. I'm looking around just so I make sure that Russ doesn't sneak in before I get a chance to see him, and then do a proper intro. So for those of you who don't know, because you're over there on YouTube or watching this in the future, today we're really fortunate to have as our guest speaker, Russ Ouelette from Pipes and Cigars and the Tobacco University, and just decades and decades of fantastic work in understanding what goes into premium pipe tobacco, or premium tobaccos, period, for not just pipes, but for cigars and all kinds of other ways that we use premium tobacco. And he's going to talk to us about all kinds of things. I have no idea yet what we're going to talk him into talking about. So once again, don't let me yak so much. Jump in and ask questions, take over, find out what you want to find out, and we'll have some good fun then. I want to say hello to all the people who are new, like Shep, and maybe a couple other people who are their first time here. We don't really have rules per se in the group. Just don't be a jerk, which I think is just, common courtesy. Be a gentleman, be a grown-up, and that's it. Everybody's got has an invitation to have an equal opportunity to ask questions, to lead the conversation, to share what you got going on. So I'm just here to help things move smoothly, and that's it. So on that note, maybe you guys want to do some humble bragging about what you got going on today?
I got a quick question for you, David.
Oh yeah, Sunbear, go ahead. What do you got?
You know how much I like Andulo. Any chance you'd let go of your tin?
Oh, you're pulling on my heartstrings, brother. You really are. I had to like just before falling asleep the other night, I'm like, what do I do with that? I've had my shot at the Andullo. I've had my, I should pass that on. Then I went, nah. We'll see. We should talk more.
Okay.
Yeah, no, if you've got a taste for something, right, guys? I mean, you have this taste for something, you're like,
Yeah, I agree.
You're just not going to be
Agree.
fulfilled. Picking and piping over there is going, what straight Virginia do you recommend the most? McBaron HH Pure Virginia? Pease Union Square, something else? Would like a full Virginia flake, but can't find any to buy.
Well, in my opinion, right now, best Virginia flakes on the market are HU from Germany. They don't sell them in the United States, but there are some ways to order them directly from Germany. There are a couple of websites which ship them to the United States.
Where is that Virginia coming from? Is that Canadian?
No, most of the Virginias are from India and Philippines. In one of the blends, I know they also use some Brazilian Virginia. Yeah, but the majority is India and Philippines, which taste is a little different from North American Virginias. Like North American Virginias have kind of fruity sweetness, and those Asian Virginias have more like honey or caramel sweetness. Somewhat similar to African Virginias, but like more toward caramel, and African probably a little more toward honey.
Got it.
I don't know how long I looked for HU before I finally gave up and figured out they didn't sell it here. Maybe I'll PM you, Dimitri, and you can hook me up with a way to procure some of that.
Yeah, there are a couple of websites. I ordered from them, and it took a while to get it, but I got everything I ordered, and it's really, really good tobacco.
Shipping costs are a little high, but it's still worth it.
Yeah, it just, there is no other Virginias like that anywhere on the market. Like, there are some good Virginias, but it's different. They're not as smooth and not as mild as HU.
A question for those of you who've been doing this longer than I have. I am attempting to smoke my first bowl of a cube cut. Peter Stokeby's 41. I can't keep it lit.
Did you pack it like a normal ribbon?
No, I just barely touched it with a tamper.
Yeah, I usually just sprinkle it in or just scoop it out. And as it sits, that's how I light it.
Yeah, I find that cube cut is very hard to keep lit, so just pack it very, very loose. Just simple gravity feed without really packing it, without stamping it down.
Excuse me, sir. Can you show us how does it look like in the tin, that German Virginia HU? Do you have it now? Can you show it?
What I'm smoking?
No, what Dimitri was talking about earlier.
I don't have it right now. I finished one of my tins recently, but it's like very, very. No, I still have another tin which I didn't open, but it's a very thin flake. Beautiful flake. It's very easy to pack. When you fold it, it crumbles, so it's very easy to pack. So it's really great tasting tobacco, and burn rate is very good. So you can just adjust a little bit how tightly you pack, depending on how fast you want it to burn.
Okay.
Super. Well, who else has got something going on there? Patrick, what are you smoking out of today?
I'm smoking a Bones Dublin, and I'm smoking GLP Jackknife Plug.
The GLP is which one?
Black Jackknife Plug.
Oh, the Jackknife.
Oh, pretty strong stuff, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Patrick won't be sleeping tonight either.
And I also have, which I haven't opened, I have a tin of Peterson's Triple P.
Oh, another strong stuff.
I love Peterson's. Yeah, Peterson's 3P. That's my favorite, one of my favorite tobaccos, and that's the only Peterson tobacco that I really love. I'm not talking about those Dunkills now made by Peterson, but like Peterson. That's the only Peterson, original Peterson that I would smoke. Absolutely delicious. African Virginias and African Burley. Burley from Malawi and Virginias from different parts of Africa. I believe East Central Africa.
There's only one Peterson's that I smoke, and that's the Irish Flake. That's in my top
Not a
five.
bad one.
David, David, I just wanted to show you real quick.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a lightly smoked bones and a heavily smoked bones. There's the difference.
So that's all natural coloring, yeah?
It's all natural coloring, just smoked once or twice a week versus smoked maybe 4 bowls in it. So that's something to look forward to.
I'm gonna have to like do a.
I'm still getting some color in mine.
There you go.
Still working on it.
I'm gonna have to do like a photo
Sometimes
essay.
I just take them out and handle them. You know what I mean? Because that's really what's doing it. So.
Well, I just got mine yesterday. I had just like had this big brain explosion that in all my collection I don't have a single bones, and I was like, how did that happen? How is that possible? When everybody I know is like, you got to get a bones, and it's so great, and I'm like, so I have one that didn't get broken in yet, that I started smoking the little nose warmer, and I like it.
I agree. I just got mine yesterday as well, and I also got from him a blackjack Rhodesian.
So you know he's going to be our guest speaker in 2 weeks.
Very good.
Oh, nice. I'll have to set mine aside for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's definitely, you know, I love him already. I haven't really had a chance to meet him in person or anything, but I was on the Chris Morgan fan club Facebook group, just typing out some stuff, and guess who pops into the conversation? And so now all of a sudden we're having a conversation back and forth. He's a terrific guy. So I'm looking forward to having him be our guest there.
You need to try his beef jerky too.
Alexis, are you working on a meerschaum right there?
Yes, sir.
Hold that up there a little bit. There we go. Look at that.
Ooh, gorgeous.
Thank you. It was given by a friend from the Philippines.
And it's got some nice color going on it too.
And David, here is the Rhodesian I got from Chris Morgan's people.
Hey, hold up, man. That is not 14-karat gold I'm seeing here.
No, that looks like a brass.
Oh,
probably a brass ring.
Looks like gold, man.
It does, but I don't think it is. Not for
well,
the price
Patrick,
I paid
you
for
are
it.
the class act in our group, you know, so we expect nothing less from you.
Thank you.
I'm gentlemen, I'm just so
nice band, bro.
Just FYI, I'm keeping my eye open for Russ to pop in or to send me a message. So far, I told him to come whenever he needed to, and I'm going to shoot him off another email right now.
Oh, good. David, did he confirm that he was coming?
Yep. Yes,
okay, good.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Like, we just made this all up in our own heads. It's like, of course.
So I've got a couple of Russ's blends. I'm smoking in my Peterson Sherlock Holmes Watson.
Nice.
And I'm smoking some Snickerdoodle and some Snowdrift, some of his aromatics.
Great pipe, the Watson.
I love it. I love it.
Beautiful pipe.
Thank you.
I've got a Baskerville here.
Nice.
Cool.
Beautiful.
It's a great pipe. They all smoke. The whole set smokes fantastic.
Yeah, Peter, I'm in search of a couple more. I'm still working on finishing my set.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm trying to convince myself part of the fun is the chase.
It's more fun than the capture.
I think I really do. When you're looking forward to, always looking for, oh, I'm gonna check eBay or whatever, and it's like, yeah, it's really. It took me like a year or something to find it. There were sets, really sets that came with all the same serial numbers, and it's like I couldn't really swing that at the time. They were like, I don't know, I think they're a couple $1,000s.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I can pick these up for reasonably, used and build my own set. It was more fun that way.
So are you going with a complete set of the same type, like a smooth finish or a sand?
Yeah, they're all the same finish, smooth. They don't really look exactly identical when you lay them out, but in the rack, they look amazing. The ornamental rack is amazing. So
they also make all those shapes in the dark finish, which is a really nice finish, but I'm trying to get them all in the reddish brown. Well, it's my plan to get them all in the reddish brown. And that's a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, they're nice.
They are.
They're very pretty. Great smokers. Good conversation piece.
Hey, Dimitri, have you tried Nat Sherman 536?
Oh, yes. Actually, 536 is my go-to out of all Nat Sherman tobaccos. I have actually 3 tints of it. It's American English, and it has a little bit of black Cavendish.
Now, normally,
topping, but just a touch of it. And it ages beautifully. When you age it for a few years, it gets much smoother. And the difference between like classic English and American English, in classic English, it's Virginia Oriental Latakia. In American English, it's Virginia Burley Latakia.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks. I'm thinking about picking up a 10. It's a little expensive though.
It's not the very cheap tobacco, but it's really good and it ages very well.
All right, great
But
to know.
even when it's fresh, that's a little bit of topping. They have a little bit of Cavendish. They added. You usually don't taste it until the end of the bowl. Only in the end you can taste like a little bit of flavor, but otherwise it's just straight American English. A really good one.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
David, what are you smoking today?
I'm just getting these Briarworks.
Oh, that's nice.
And I've been smoking well, actually, I came from my Pad Club meeting on Saturday, so I kind of have it still here in the bag.
Nice.
The number one.
That's good. That's good stuff. Very good stuff.
Yeah, I love John Cotton Smyrna. Yeah, first time Patrick and I tasted it a few years ago at New York Pipe Club picnic when Russ Ouelette and Danzy Johnson were our guests, and they brought the samples before it was released on the market.
And they also, remember, Dimitri also brought Bengal Slices as well.
Bengal Slices and the Warhorse. Yeah, before any of them were available on the market. And I personally like Russ Ouellette's version of Bengal Slices better than the original one.
Agreed.
Well, I've only had the new one, but I like it.
Just want to make a quick, again, a check-in with the guys over there on YouTube, just so that they don't feel like they're being ignored, because they're, growing as a group over there. So Desert Pine Piper, excellent. Loving all these names. Desert Pine. Everybody's got their Starbucks name. You go into Starbucks, you like, I have my own name. I'm no longer, David Dorian. I'm Sloan.
Yes,
so something like that. So everybody's got their pipe club name going over there. Anyway, good to see you guys. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. or shout out what you're smoking today, and we'll keep going.
I've got some Firestorm here. Russ Ouellette's
Nice.
Firestorm.
Nice.
That's
and
a
a
nice
little
pipe.
Sarah L-Tang pipe.
I was just,
And
that's
you can tell them,
beautiful
yes,
grain.
there is cinnamon in it.
That's some beautiful grain on that. That's an L-Tang, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Nice pipe, man.
I have a question for you guys. So I am smoking this, right? And anybody else do Haunted Bookshop as well?
Yes. I smoked Haunted Bookshop before.
So I'm typically when I do a review or something like that, I don't read anybody else's stuff because I'm like, I'm not that smart to pick up what they're talking about in the first place. And in the second place, I just kind of want to like figure out what it tastes like to me. But I happened across somebody's review and they were talking about, how peppery this was to them, which I understand because it is supposed to contain a healthy dose of perique, but it wasn't that strong to me. It wasn't, I just thought it was nice, I could do with this all day.
Man, you're a strong man.
Maybe it's strong. Or it's just dead up here. There's just, it's just like.
You know what happened to me, David, when I smoked that? Man, three puffs, tres, and my eyes were wide open.
So I saw you in the camera.
That's the secret to my ability to focus, I guess.
If you try the other one, it's even stronger, the Old Joe Crunch.
What was that?
The Old Joe Crunch, the original,
Old Joe Crunch.
it's much more stronger than the Haunted Bookshop.
Okay, the original Old Joe Crunch, I will try it next time. I'll order that.
I was intrigued by the whole connection to the book. So I picked up a copy of the book and I've been reading the book and I won't say anything about what the video is going to look like because you'll just have to watch it and see for yourself. But I just enjoyed it much more so than I had expected. So far, there's only been one that has been a disappointment, and that's been the Penzance. So everything else, I've just yay, love this one. Well,
I kind of like the Margate better.
Yeah, as I know, there are so many people who are like in love with Penzance, and I would not want to in any way imply that I don't respect that opinion.
Guys, Russ Ouelette is with us now. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's do this sort of semi-officially and say, gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to meet along with you a legend in the pipe world. I called him the other day on Facebook the Dean of Pipes because he has Tobacco University, right? And so who runs the university? So if you would join me in welcoming one and only Russ Ouelette. Hi, Russ.
Welcome, Russ.
Welcome.
Are you up to speed on using Zoom? Have you used this before?
Oh yeah, I've used it for meetings constantly since March.
Awesome. Well then, we're really terrifically glad to have you here. And for the two people in the pipe universe who don't know who you are, can you sort of give your life story in a sentence or two, the Reader's Digest, or you know what? Go for the full length version. Just tell us the whole thing.
It's really not all that much to tell. I was the son of a pipe smoker, so when I hit the end of high school, it was time to give it a try. So I started smoking a pipe, and because of my father's input, I wound up getting into it pretty deeply, quickly. And 6 months later, while I was attending college, I got a job working part-time at a tobacco shop in a mall. And they let me experiment, and I came up with a few blends. And we sold them, and people liked them well enough that, being part of a chain, they sent the recipes to the other stores. But this was the mid to late 70s. And at that point, that's when the business, as far as the pipe side went, started going south. People just weren't buying pipes and tobacco at the same rate. And so I wound up having to get out of the business and did a number of other things for years, but I still had friends from the tobacco shop who liked what I did. And so they would ask me to make blends for them. And so I would continue in a small way. And then I wound up in a job that, quite frankly, I got very fed up with for a while. And I had been buying my tobaccos and cigars from a gentleman who had set up a store in the mall. And he asked if I had the recipe for an old blend from the Pipe Den, which is the chain store that I worked for in the past. And I remembered the recipe, and I gave it to him. And that day he wouldn't let me pay for any of my purchases. And every time I went in after that, he'd ask me, "When are you coming to work for me?" And I said, I'm pretty happy right now. And then I finally hit a rough stretch at that job. And when he asked me when I was coming to work for him, I said, "Do you have 10 minutes? And so we went off to his office. We discussed things. And within a couple of weeks, I was back in the business. And there was a pipe club, and that met in the store, and he asked me to make some blends for them to try to see, what they thought of my work. And so I made some, and it was thankfully very positive feedback from the club members. And then they did so well selling them just in the store that Scott decided that we should try them on the website, which was pipesandcigars.com. And so we put them on the website, and that started all the growth, where we went from 6 homemade blends and in the space of about 5 years to more than 100. Now our operation is part of Scandinavian Tobacco Group. So we're a sister company to Cigars International, and work out of the same building in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I'm down here. And although I can't do any new blends because of the FDA regulations, it's allowed me to move into doing a number of other things. And one of my primary responsibilities is writing most of the copy for the website, for the catalogs, some of the emails. So that's what I'm doing now, and thankfully I can do most of it from home. So that's the nickel tour.
Well, it's fascinating. So one thing I just am curious about, and again, forgive my ignorance, because the amount of stuff that I actually know about pipes and tobacco could fit inside the bowl here. When you talk about the new FDA regulations that are preventing you from doing new blends, so does that prevent you from doing small batch stuff and small runs of things as well?
If I were working in a brick and mortar store, where I was doing the blending right in front of the customer, it wouldn't be an issue. That's been exempted in the FDA regulations. But doing single runs, the only way I could do it, for example, if I got, let's say I got some 20-year aged Virginia, and I took one of my current blends that uses that kind of Virginia, but just not aged, then I could swap them out and that for a limited run. But if I change the blend at all, it's designated a new blend and we can't set it live.
How's that make you feel, man?
Angry and frustrated. This is something that I've loved doing and would love to continue doing, but you know, my hands are tied. There's nothing that I can do about it. And the rationale behind the regulations, frankly, is ridiculous. It was done with one intention in mind, and it had nothing to do with new pipe tobacco blends.
Yeah, it was done just so for approval of each blend. The blender makers will have to pay a lot of money to FDA, and that's how they make the money.
Well, that's only part of it. The original intention of this was that when they enacted the new rules in 2007 that didn't allow companies to sell roll your own tobacco by mail, a number of the roll your own companies repackaged their tobaccos and decided to sell them as pipe tobacco. So they were looking for a way to come up with a regulation that would take those tobaccos off the market. And so the way they did it was they went back to the date that the regulation went into effect and said any new tobaccos that were put on market after this date are going to have to come off the market by a date in 2021 now. It originally was 2016, but it kept getting bumped up. So the whole idea was they just wanted those pipe tobaccos that were supposedly roll your own. They wanted those off the market. And this was a way to do that. To make it worse, the Pipe Tobacco Council, when they were trying to come up with their regulations, made recommendations that would have accomplished the same thing without stopping us from being able to create new blends. Because what they did was they said, if the tobacco is cut finer than this, if the tobacco had this low a moisture content, and a few other things, that would identify them as roll your own. And then those could have been identified and removed from the market. But they decided to use this date, probably because it was, first off, easier for them to identify. But secondly, it also allowed them to take more products off the market.
Yeah, and also most of those people in FDA, they know very little about tobacco in general. So they don't discriminate between different kinds of tobacco. For them, tobacco is tobacco, and that's the end of it.
Excuse me for just a second. Well,
fellas, while
I already sent mine in.
Russ is chatting away over there, I just wanted to give you a couple of quick updates here. I put everybody on mute just so that we could get Russ's voice recorded and out there live streaming. But that doesn't mean that I'm silencing anybody. You all have, you should have the ability to turn your mics back on anytime you want to. You just want to throw out a question or jump in there. Please don't hesitate. Just go ahead and turn your mic back on. If you have some trouble doing that, let me know, and maybe I can do something on my side to get your mic back on. Also, if you're on a mobile device, if you're watching this on your phone or iPad or something like that, be aware that the Zoom app on a mobile device has a finger swipe. And so you can see you can see Russ all by himself or the Brady Bunch or however you want to do it just by doing finger swipe. And that's a couple of little cool things that you may not know about. Let me just open it up to some questions for Russ to see if anybody's got something that they want to ask. Yeah,
I'll
John.
jump in. I got a question.
Russ, is there any way that we can, is there any way for us pipe smokers to know which tobacco blends might be coming off the market in 2021? Ones that we might be enjoying?
At this point, we can't say for sure because some of them have been submitted for standard equivalency. And until we have approval on the ones that have been submitted, we won't know what's coming off or what's going to, the ones we know are going to stay are simple. We know that if we were selling it prior to February 15th of 2007, it stays. But the rest of them, we're all going to have to wait until they go through the standard equivalency process to let us know if we can keep them or not.
So Oliver, knowing that you have nothing else going on, this sounds like a research project for all those tobaccos. I'm pulling your chain, Oliver. But that would be interesting to find out. Todd, did you have a question for Russ?
Yeah, I did. Hey, Russ, it's great to meet you. This is Todd out in California. You know, I was listening to your story and I couldn't help but think of Greg Peace up at Drucker and Sons in Berkeley. You know, I've only been doing this for 7 years. And I think in a lot of ways, I'm blessed that I never got to try all these original blends that are being reproduced now. And I'm thinking like Sobranie and others. And I think of the story of Father Dempsey's when Alan Kramer was trying to reproduce a blend for him down in LA with something like Smyrna, which I'm smoking now, by the way, lovely stuff. How did you go about, did you smoke the original Smyrna, John Cotton's, or how did you go about, I mean, did you assemble a forensics team? How did you put that together?
Well, yes, I had smoked all of the old John Cotton's tobaccos. When I started working in the business in the mid 70s, I was encouraged to try the different tin tobaccos. And back then, John Cotton's number one and two, Smyrna, they were all available and I smoked them. As far as it goes, people say, well, you know, there have to be some tins out there. You know, can't you get a tin from a collector and use that as a reference? And yes, we did that to some degree, but you also have to remember that with 30, 35 years of age in the tin, the tobacco is going to taste nothing like it did when it was brand new. So I had, in those cases, I had to go purely by my memory. And I don't know how it is for some other people, but there are certain flavors or smells that just trigger a memory.
Yes.
And so I started out with what I knew was in the blend. And I had to tweak the amount of each component. And I got to a point where all of a sudden that little trigger went off that said, that's familiar. That's where I knew, okay, this is really my starting point. So now it's just going to be fine tuning. And it's pretty much like a light goes off when you finally hit the sweet spot.
Russ, so today I'm smoking this Bowling Green. That's one you made for New York Pipe Club.
Yep.
It has good age on it. It's absolutely amazing. With age, it got even better. And both Patrick and I had pleasure of tasting your John Cotton tobaccos, your Warhorse, and your Bengal Slices when you were a guest at our New York Pipe Club barbecue a few years ago. And by the way, I had chance to smoke original Bengal Slices and a couple of other reincarnations. I have to say that I like yours the best. When I smoke original Bengal Slices, I feel like somebody sprayed perfume into my pipe. When I smoke your Bengal Slices, I taste amazing English tobacco with a little bit of topping, pleasant topping on it.
Well, thank you. And I think the reason that you detect that difference is because I'll let a little tiny kitten out of the bag. One of the flavorings that's used in Bengal Slices is anise. It's a combination of flavorings, but anise is part of it.
Yep.
There's a big difference between the anise that's used by U.S. manufacturers and the one that's used by European manufacturers. And so the fact that I'm, for obvious reasons, using the U.S. version, there is a minor difference in the top dressing. But I find the American version just a touch more subtle. And
I find it much more pleasant.
Well, thank you.
You know, I alluded to that earlier. I consider myself blessed that I never got to try, for example, the original Bengal Slices. So all these tobaccos that are reproductions, I'm like, you know, for my layman's palate, I've got a tabula rasa. I'm going to try it out. And I just love these things, man. They're fantastic. I've got all of your John Cotton stuff and the Bengal Slices, and they're just fantastic tobaccos.
Well, thank you.
I have a question, if I can, David, for Russell. Russ, I'm smoking John Cotton's #1 right now. It's actually my all-day English is what it is. But you're kind of saying that you think you got it pretty close to the original when you reblended that.
Reasonably close. I mean, you have to consider that the components that they used, some of them aren't going to be available anymore.
Well, I love it. So I didn't get to smoke the original, but I'm very happy with this.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoy it.
So the original John Cottons, did they use Syrian Latakia or Cyprian?
It depends at which stage the tin you're smoking is from.
When did the original run come out? When did they start that?
Oh God, that company goes back, I think, to the 30s or maybe even earlier.
Pennsylvania, right?
What?
Pennsylvania?
No, Scotland. Cotton's was from Edinburgh.
Okay.
The reason that you identify Pennsylvania is because the trademark was bought by the Standard Tobacco Company of Pennsylvania, and they're the ones who approached me to recreate the blends.
Russ, I have a question about your ability to recreate. Like, I was thinking about this, like perfumers and sommeliers and whatnot, who have a certain palate, have a certain nose for things. Every time, you know, your name comes up, and even reading your blog posts on pipes and cigars, that you have a special sense that I think eludes a lot of people. Do you sense that yourself? You just have you've got the palate for it to hone in on it.
Well, yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to is the ability to not taste something or smell something as a whole, but the ability to taste or smell something and identify the individual components that make up the whole.
That's really extraordinary. That's like magic.
That's main difference between professional tobacco blender like Russ and amateur blender like me. I can make good blend, but maintain consistency of blend. That's totally different thing. And I find it much more difficult than creating new blend.
Well, you know, people, let's say you're reading one of Jim Ink's reviews of a tobacco, breaks down the individual flavor notes that he detects. Well, that's basically what I get too. So if somebody sends me a sample of a new crop of Virginia, I'm tasting it and I'm assessing and receiving notes like grass, citrus, hay. If it's a red, I'll get bread notes or toasty notes. And a lot of people, for some reason, whatever the reason is, don't break down the individual flavor components. They just taste red Virginia, for example. And you know what? There are times that I really wish that I didn't have that ability, because sometimes it takes the enjoyment away of just sitting down and loading up a pipe for me, because I'm analyzing the tobacco as I smoke it, rather than just smoking it and enjoying it.
So yeah, I totally understand that. Once in a while I post like cigar reviews on Instagram. So I'm actually kind of used to analyzing what I'm tasting from the beginning to the end, how it changes, what different flavors I get from puff to puff. So sometimes I actually force myself not to think about it, just smoke my pipe or smoke my cigar and enjoy overall experience without trying to detect what I'm getting there.
I think the secret there is to take 2 or 3 shots of bourbon first, and then your analytical mind will just turn off.
Well, 4 or 5 works better, but
4 or 5 works better.
You know, there's a difference between being able to identify flavor components and on a fantasy run, because I enjoy a good cigar too. And for years, I read the reviews in Cigar Aficionado. And they would include things like notes of marzipan and pencil lead. Okay, first off, if you're sucking on the business end of a pencil on a regular basis, you've got issues.
The FDA outlawed that.
Yeah, so this whole some of the things that these people are saying they're tasting, they either have such an evolved palate that they should actually be an executive chef somewhere, or they're just trying to come up with new flowery crap to put into their reviews so that people will be impressed. But I can tell you, I smoked an awful lot of cigars, and I've never detected marzipan in a cigar.
Well, I also find that like when I'm smoking same cigar and on different days, sometimes I get a totally different experience. One day, depending on what the weather is, what I ate or drank before, what mood I'm in, one day I can pick up certain flavors. Next day, I'm smoking same cigar, I'm picking up different flavors. It's very subjective. Also, different people perceive same cigar differently.
Yeah, and also it's not even just from day to day or cigar to cigar. It can be from one moment to another. I guarantee you that if you light up your cigar inside and puff on it for 5 or 10 minutes, and you open up the door and walk outside, immediately that cigar tastes different.
Yep, exactly.
Russ, we've got a question from over there on YouTube, taking us back a little bit to some of the earlier part of what you were talking about. The question is the FDA moving away from tobaccos with toppings, or is it more complex than that?
No, toppings really were not the issue there, although that question probably comes up because of Massachusetts. Some states, primarily Massachusetts right now, are prohibiting flavored tobaccos, but that has nothing to do with the FDA. The FDA didn't say anything about flavorings. The only thing that the FDA is involved in terms of top dressings or casings is analyzing to make sure that they consider it safe. But they're not trying to stop companies from making flavored products. That's coming from the states.
Got it. By the way, another gentleman over there on YouTube, Ed Graves, says Russ is the man. He says Firestorm is one of his top 5. So just so you know the love that's coming through there.
I want to try and ease everybody's anxiety. I have a former student who worked very, very closely with Kamala Harris. So maybe I can pull some strings in a couple of months if things turn out.
Please do. Please
call
do.
in a favor.
We'll have a whole new conversation about that. That's terrific. So Alexis and a couple other people, I see you threw your mics back on. If you've got some questions, just go ahead and throw it out there.
I've got Russ. When you're trying out a tobacco, when you're trying to analyze a tobacco for the first time, what vehicle are you using? Are you using Briar? What kind of what do you try it out in?
My general rule of thumb is I always have clays around for initial tasting. The reason that I will use a clay is because you can remove the ghost from a clay. So you're always going to be working with a fresh vehicle. And if you don't know how, the easy way to eliminate a ghost from a clay pipe is to either get the charcoal grill going or get your gas grill lit up. And you can just take the pipe and put the bowl into the charcoal as it's burning, or you can put it right over the burner in the gas grill and let it go for about a half an hour. And it will pretty much eliminate whatever might be built up inside the chamber.
Wow. I learned something new.
Awesome. I got a question about the Balkan Sobrani blend that you made. Since the original has the Janish, if you can say, of course, what do you put in the new version?
Energy.
Okay. Because I tried an old one version, an old pouch that I had, and it was more like spicier than the new version. So I don't know if it's a different blend or different leaf.
Did you say pouch?
Yeah.
Okay. If you got it when it was a pouched version, by that time they probably weren't using Unity anymore. It was back when it was in tins, especially the old taller, narrower tins. That's when they were using Unity.
Okay.
The reason that I created White Knight as a tribute to Balkan Sobrani was because I was able to get my hands on Unity. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have even attempted.
Thank you.
Awesome. What else, guys? I know that because I can hear you thinking. You know me, I can read minds. But what other questions do we want to throw at Russ? And then I'm going to challenge him to talk about the future of pipe smoking.
I have a question. So I know White Knight is a Sobrani tribute, and Black House is the Black Label Sobrani tribute. And I also enjoy Magnum Opus, and that seems to be like a culmination of the two. What is that? Not paying tribute to, but I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Is that a replica of another blend, or was that an original? Excuse my ignorance. I'm sure the information's out there. I just haven't read it yet.
That's perfectly fine. I was a big fan of the original Balkan Sobrani back in the 70s. And to me, the star of the blend really was not the Latakia. So what I did was I played around with Sobrani to tailor it a bit more to my tastes. So I would take a tin of Balkan Sobrani and I would add more Yaniji to it. And then I also would add in a small amount of Perique because I liked the additional depth and spice. And that was my regular personal smoke for a long time. And when Balkan Sobrani changed during the 80s, I no longer got the satisfaction when I tried to amp up the blend for my purposes. So when I finally got my hands back in some Yaniji in 2009, one of the first things I wanted to do selfishly was to try to recreate my old favorite. And when I finally got to the point where it was close enough that I really enjoyed it, that became the first member of the Hearth and Home Marquee series, Magnum Opus.
Russ, one of the fellows here
Thank you.
has a question that I wanted to throw out for him. He says, what can you tell us about elderflower and Italian florets? How can the essence of flowers be imparted into a tobacco?
Okay, well, florals have been used for hundreds of years in pipe tobacco. I mean, floral essences have been used by the Lakeland companies, Samuel Galleth and Hogarth, for a long, long time. They use flowers like rose geranium. Now, as far as the process for using it, I know in the past that some tobaccos actually included petals. There's a McConnell's tobacco called Red Roses that actually used rose petals, and so did one or two blends from Peter Stokeby in years past. My guess is that probably when they're using it as a flavoring, they're probably dissolving the flower or immersing the flowers in some kind of alcohol to extract the flavor elements from it and then use it as a top dressing. As far as Italian florets though, what that's referring to is actually pieces of Italian dark fired tobacco. They're not actually flowers. But it's relatively easy to extract floral essences if you want to use it as a top dressing. And in fact, you can probably find essential oils out there already that have those essences, and all you would have to do is to be able to thin it out enough to make it practical to use in tobacco.
I know that, and that, first of all, I don't have any idea whether this is a practical thing for you to do with tobacco, but in tea, for example, jasmine tea is created by layering jasmine flowers with a layer of tea, and then you put another layer of tea over the top of that and a layer of jasmine flowers, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're essentially making a cake, right? And then that imparts that directly into the tea. So I'm imagining that might be possible with the tobacco as well, although that might get overpowering in a way.
Well, the method that you're using is basically referred to as infusion. And infusion is used quite a bit. Some tobaccos are taken and packed into bourbon barrels or rum barrels. And then it's just taking the essence that's trapped in the wood, and over a period of time, it becomes infused into the tobacco. It's a much more gentle and subtle way of adding flavorings rather than just spraying a top dressing on it.
Got it. So there's another question over there from YouTube. Latakia Hunter said, is there a blend from the past that you would love to have recreated but never got a chance to?
Yeah, there probably are a bunch. None of them jump right into my head right at the moment. But certainly there are blends I would love to try to recreate. Of course, it's futile in a couple of ways, in the fact that I could do it for myself, but I couldn't do it commercially. And the second thing is that today it takes a lot more tweaking to get that flavor, because if the original components aren't available, you have to kind of substitute and modify to be able to get the same flavor, but you're definitely going to have to use some different components. In the case of Black House, to recreate that experience, the problem was that given a target to recreate, it wasn't like they were saying recreate Balkan Sobrani 759. They were saying recreate a 22-year-old tin of Balkan Sobrani 759. So when I smoked the sample that they sent me from that old tin, there was a round sweetness that I would not be able to recreate using the components that 759 had. So I actually had to take some unflavored black Cavendish and work it into the blend to try to recreate the flavor of the sample I had. If I were truly targeting recreating 759 as I remember it from the 70s, there wouldn't have been any black Cavendish in the blend.
Wow, got it. Fabulous. Well,
I smoked a Edgeworth Ready Rub match. I never smoked the original Edgeworth, and somebody commented somewhere that Ernie Q at the Deluxe Crumb Cut at Watch City was the same. So having now tried the original, I tried Ernie Q's Deluxe Crumb Cut, and they were amazingly similar, almost spot on. And I had a question and it just ran away from me. Oh yeah, Lakelands. I've been doing this for 7 years, and I have no experience with Lakelands. I smoked. I can't remember what tobacco it was, but one of the comments that people didn't review was that it tasted like soap, and I kind of picked up on that. What is Lakeland? I don't know anything about it.
Lakeland is a region, so it has nothing to do with flavorings. Lakeland is the region that Samuel Gawith and Hogarth are based in. And now it's become known to refer to the flavorings that they use, which are very heavily botanical. A lot of flowers and other elements from nature. And also, some people, when they're referring to Lakeland tobaccos, are referring referring to tobaccos that are relatively strong. And that's because they use a lot of African Virginias, which tend to have a higher nicotine content than American Virginias or Virginias grown in South America. So it's a combination of things. Plus, it's a lot of old-fashioned technique that goes into it because a number of the pieces of equipment that they continue to use were from the 1800s. So it really is more a style of tobacco based on the area of origin than it is a particular type of flavor or flavoring.
Russ, did I hear you right that earlier you said that you enjoy using Periques in your blends? Did I get?
Oh, sure.
So you want to talk about that a little bit? What is it about Perique that is a good ingredient for you?
Well, there are spicy tobaccos, dark air cured tobaccos, dark burleys, dark fired Kentucky. They're spicy. They're sweet tobaccos. Virginias have a natural sweetness. And then things like Black Cavendish, whether it's flavored or unflavored, has a sweetness because sugar is added to the tobacco. But Perique is unique in the fact that it's both spicy and sweet. The old term that they used to use was plum and pepper to describe the flavor of Perique. Because it has kind of an aged flavor to it. That's one of the reasons I'm drawn to it. And that only makes sense because it is aged tobacco. They take an offshoot of burley that's grown in St. James Parish, Louisiana. They bunch it, pack it into barrels. They put a lid on it. They press it with a lot of pressure. And then they turn the tobaccos a few times during a year, and that year-long processing forces some of the juice out of the tobacco, and that ferments. And the result is a very dark stewed fruit flavor, but also a certain pepperiness. And one of the things about the Perique is that people have noted it for being strong as far as nicotine content goes. The actual nicotine content of Perique is not all that high. But what it does is it creates an environment inside your mouth due to alkalinity that allows the mucous membranes to absorb tobacco, the nicotine from tobacco more readily. So even though it doesn't have that much nicotine on its own, it does have a lot of capability to allow your body to take on nicotine. So I use it for two reasons: for the flavor, to get that sweetness and spice, and also to be able to kick up the blend a little bit.
Yeah, I remember seeing Anthony Bourdain, rest in peace, wrote about Perique. And he actually went to Ray Martin's farm in Louisiana. Is Ray Martin still with us?
No, and but the family is only making Perique for one company. They're making it for American Spirit, and it's used only in cigarettes. So all the commercial Perique used by pipe tobacco companies comes from the LA Poche Perique factory.
Awesome. Well, before I turn the conversation to times in the future, what else? What other questions have you got for Russ here? By the way, Russ, thank you so. Like, I've learned more in the last 50 minutes than I probably have in the last 3 years of pipe smoking, just picking up stuff. So you are the man. Let's put it that way. So what else, guys? Other questions that you might, and I know again that there are a lot of folks who love to just sit back and chill and listen to what's going on, but also don't be shy. If you got a question, just throw it out there, or if you want me to ask it, put it in the chat and I'll put it forward. But it's everybody's.
I also want to add that Russ has amazing videos on Facebook and on YouTube about tobaccos. I learned a lot from those videos. I find it extremely interesting and very educational, and thank you so much for doing that.
I really love to do it. Obviously, if you're immersed in this as a living, you must be interested enough to want to talk about it. Fortunately, to take an old quip from the past, people always thought that my parents had me vaccinated with a phonograph needle. So I really have no problem talking to people, whether it's one-on-one or in a group. That is the ham in me. So I enjoy doing the videos because I think it's a lot easier to communicate an idea verbally than it is to do it with the written word. And although I've done a lot of writing, the problem is expression. I can write an article, and yes, you can use italics, you could use boldface or whatever, but it still doesn't get across the emphasis that you can get when you're speaking. And so I find this to be a better way of communicating, especially if you're trying to put emphasis on a certain aspect of what you're talking about.
Russ, we had another question over there on YouTube, and it actually was a question about something that you talked about in the very beginning, how you got started. So I won't make you go back there, but I maybe tweak Jeremy's question just a little bit. When you sort of got bit by the bug of pipe tobacco, was there something special, like the taste, the mystique of smoking a pipe, and like what was it, if you can put your finger on it, that really caught you?
Well, I had never smoked anything before a pipe, and I got into it more because my father would smoke a pipe. I loved the smell of it, and I even loved the smell of the tobacco before it was lit. So it just was something that pulled me in. I made the error of starting out with an aromatic. And I don't mean that to knock aromatics. Hey, smoke what you like what you smoke. But I made the mistake because I honestly don't believe if you want somebody to try a pipe and remain a pipe smoker, that an aromatic is the best thing to start with. Mainly because the higher moisture content of aromatics and what you have to do to keep the tobacco lit really is problematic. There's more opportunities to burn your tongue, to get tongue bite with an aromatic than, for example, a mild, let's say, burley blend with a little bit of latakia. Those blends burn more coolly. They're relatively easy to keep lit, and you get a lot of flavor out of it, so that you don't have to puff furiously to get some taste. Whereas a lot of the commercial aromatics don't have a tremendous amount of flavor on their own, and then you wind up puffing harder trying to get something out of it, And then, of course, that leads to burning your mouth and whatever. So it was really my father's influence more than anything. And when I tried the aromatic, frankly, I was just about ready to toss the pipe and the tobacco in the garbage. Not to mention that the first pipe that I bought for myself was the pipe, which were those cast phenolic resin pipes with bright colors and a pyrolytic graphite chamber. They weighed about 18 pounds. Mine was a pot shape. It was red, and even though the walls were really thick because of the material it was made from, after you puffed about 4 or 5 times, the outside of the chamber was so hot you couldn't hold on to the pipe. Thankfully, my father noticed the pipe, asked me that if I had started smoking a pipe. I told him yes, and he just shook his head and he said, "Come on, let's get you a real pipe." And he took me to his tobacconists and got me a nice rusticated briar and also a Latakia blend. And from that point on, it became part of who I am.
So, Alexis.
Russ, I have another question. I know a few years ago you were working on cigars made with pipe tobacco. Did anything come out of it? Any possibility of having it in the future?
Well, yeah, I've actually made a number of tobaccos using cigar leaf. In the Marquee line, we had the Virginia Memory number 10, but in the Hearth and Home Signature series, we have Virginia Spice, which is a little bit different animal. It's actually a Virginia Perique that also contains cigar leaf. So I've been using cigar leaf in blends for a long time.
No, I'm talking about the cigars you were working on. Cigars made using pipe tobacco.
I did not have a hand in that. I was talking about it, but it wasn't something that I was involved in. That was a product that eventually wound up coming out from Lane Limited called Half Pipe. But I didn't have a hand in the project.
Yeah, because I know you were talking about it, that about possibility of you being involved in it.
Yeah, I mean, I had talks with the people who were making it, but I did not directly have any involvement in the project.
Yeah, because also a couple of years ago, I know Hamlet Paredes was working on a cigar made using some pipe tobacco. He actually sent me a couple of samples to taste. He was working on it for Eric Norgan, and I smoked his cigar, the prototype which Hamlet made with Latakia. It was quite pleasant, though I would prefer more Latakia in it.
Yeah, well, we did have a cigar that AJ Fernandez had made called Spectre. And that was also made with Latakia.
Yeah, it's a Nicaraguan, very good Nicaraguan leaf with some Latakia in it, yeah.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed that cigar. Unfortunately, we had kind of hoped that it would catch on with pipe smokers as a change of pace, and that it would do the same thing with cigar smokers. But apparently the flavor must have been too far afield for cigar smokers, and not enough exposure to pipe smokers meant that sales really weren't all that great. So we had to kind of discontinue it, let it die.
Yeah. I also found some cigars which use Bizuki from Java, Indonesia, like Roma Craft Intemperance Whiskey Rebellion. That Bizuki, they have a Bizuki binder, and that reminds me a lot of Perique. It's like muted version of Perique, and I can distinctly taste binder in that cigar, which I found absolutely delightful.
Yeah, and you know, there is some crossover. Some of the cigar leaf that's used in a number of the European, especially the dried cigars, are very similar to Orientals.
Yeah,
So,
also like a Toscano extra vecchio, which is extra fermented, dark fired Kentucky, basically. It also reminds me a little bit of Perique, which is why it's my favorite out of all Toscano cigars.
sure, and in the U.S. we have DeNobili and Perotti made in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Yep. Yeah, now they also belong to the same company, to Toscano company. Yes, they acquired it a couple of years ago.
And they use dark fired Kentucky, and a lot of people don't. They don't. I lost my train of thought. They've had it in there for years. It's not anything new, but a lot of people.
No, I'm personally, I'm a big fan of Toscano cigars. I always have some with me.
Oh yeah. I mean, I started selling them when I was working in the mall store.
Yeah, it's basically, technically it is cigar made with pipe tobacco. It's basically burley, either grown in Italy or US. Most of them use both, and I find it very pleasant smoke.
Yep. In fact, going back to the 70s, when they would cut the ends of the cigars when they were made in the factory, all those ends were collected and then crushed down and put into plastic wrap pouches, and a lot of people would use those as pipe tobacco.
Russ, we have a question from Alexis. Had thrown this up a little bit earlier, and I think he's really casting back to older blends. He's talking about the old Revelation that Einstein used to smoke, and is like, is that something you think that could be recreated?
Well, okay, it was kind of recreated at one point because House of Windsor took over the brand, and their version of it wasn't exactly the same as the original. Could it be recreated? It certainly could be, but it wouldn't be allowed to be sold on the market because it would constitute a new blend as far as the FDA is concerned. There is a match for it, well, two matches for it currently. Cornell and Dio says that their Epiphany is a match for Revelation, and also there's one match tobacco called, I believe, RVL-1 from Sutliff that we sell on our site as Match Revelation. But to get it to be exactly like the old UST version, it would be difficult.
So here's the question of the hour. Everybody wants to know. This came from the YouTube group. What's your favorite blend?
Well, my favorite blend overall is Magnum Opus because I made it for me. And then if we were to go to my second, it would probably be Firestorm because the directions I was given when we started that series is we want you to blend for your taste. We don't want you to blend for what you think other people will want. So that was a Virginia Perique that I came up with for my own tastes. So those two are probably my favorite, but quite frankly, I'm constantly smoking something different. I rarely repeat a tobacco twice in a week. So, and it's not just my stuff. I don't only smoke what I blend. I appreciate everybody's work. So I'm always trying different.
Do you work with other blenders? Bud asked, like over there at PNC, another blender, Scotty. Do you guys collaborate to create something?
Okay, Scotty was the original owner of PNC, and Scott and I worked together for, let's see, I'm now 17 years with PNC. The first 10 years I worked with Scott. Scott created Butternut Burley. Some of the tobaccos in that line actually just were blends that Scott acquired over time. Like Milk and Honey was the blend from the old malt tobacco shop that I gave Scott. Trout Stream was created by another one of his employees. So we collaborated on some thing when I got Hearth and Home started. But have I worked with other blenders? Sure. I've done a number of things with Mark Ryan from Daughters and Ryan and LA Poche Perique. He and I have worked on some projects. And then there was a series that I'll go on, but you may have remembered it from PNC called Mike and Russ, the Mind Meld. And that was, those were blends that Mike McNeil from McClelland and I put together.
Yeah, those were great blends you and Mike made together, yeah.
Well, you know, that was wonderful for me because nobody could recreate the process for Virginias that McClelland could. I mean, there's nothing like the McClelland Virginias.
Yeah, I totally agree. There are some great Virginias on the market, but nothing can substitute for McClelland Virginias.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were able to work on that project, that was nice. And of course, I got a lot of input from Carl McAllister before he retired at Sutliff, because when we moved Hearth and Home over from my manufacture to them making it, he and I had to work very closely for a good period of time to make sure that they were able to faithfully recreate what I had done. And I needed his help because he was the master of casings and top dressings. And where I don't use a lot of top dressings in Hearth and Home, of course, all Virginias and Burleys are cased. And I really needed his help to make sure that the casing was right.
We have another question over here from YouTube. Can you recommend a match blend for Kentucky Club?
Yeah, there is a match blend for Kentucky Club.
There you go, Todd.
You just look under match alternatives in our bulk tobaccos, and there is a Kentucky Club aromatic match, and also in our Hearth and Home Midtown series, there's Derby Club aromatic, which is also very similar to the old Kentucky Club.
So I just wanted to share anecdotally, I know I've shared this with the group before, that 30 years ago, I was in a car accident, and my olfactory lobe the nerves connecting that were knocked offline for a couple of years. I was an aspiring chef. When you lose your sense of smell, you lose your sense of taste. And it was a little over 2 years before I was able to smell anything. And one of the great pleasures I get out of pipe smoking are the flavors. And I don't think that my taste is, or my smell is back to 100%. But you know, I had a bowl of, and I haven't smoked Smyrna in probably a year. And I had one bowl in a mortar this morning. I'm doing another bowl in a clay, and just fantastic smells and flavorings. I don't want to get into details, but it's such a pleasure. And the other thing was that, you know, I started this 7 years ago, and this club is, I feel like I'm in a 12-step program for pipe smokers, you know, because before this club came along, I didn't know anybody, and I couldn't talk to anybody about smoking a pipe. You know, in Silicon Valley, it's nobody smokes a pipe. Nobody smokes anything except for weed. And you know, I've been doing this for 7 years. Very steep learning curve because I didn't have anybody around me to mentor me. I didn't know anything about anything. So this is just fantastic to be able to meet with people like Russ and the others that have been on the show. And I'll shut up now.
I think you speak for a lot of us there, Todd. That's exactly what I would say. Just in the interest of time, because we still have plenty of time. Nobody get excited, but I when we're in that last half hour, I try to steer us off to talk about the future a little bit, if you don't mind. So, Russ, where do you think the future of pipe smoking and pipe smoking culture and the kinds of products that we'll be able to find and taste and whatnot, where do you think that's going?
Well, as far as innovation goes, the innovation is going to be in pipes. It's certainly not going to be in tobacco because we're handcuffed there. But we may have a little possibility, without getting into too much detail. But if I can't create a new blend, that doesn't mean that we can't send out 2 or 3 or 4 tobaccos individually that you can blend at home. So we could create new blends, but we would just have to sell them to you as individual items that you can blend at home, because they have no regulations on what the end consumer does with the tobacco.
I think that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
So that's definitely a possibility going forward, that we do that. But also, you know, with pipes, you can change colors of stems, and you're not changing really the components, because white acrylic and red acrylic are just acrylic. So you can do a lot with colors and shapes. You can modify shapes. So there's going to be a lot of innovation in pipes. It's going to be groups like this, actual live pipe clubs in areas around the country, and the pipe shows that you can find the culture. Do a lot with colors for sure going forward. And shapes, you can modify shapes. So there's going to be innovation.
So what I'll do is when David gets us online, I will forward this session to my former student, who will pass it on to Kamala, and she'll be able to understand our pain.
The power of the people. All three of us, right? The power of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that the FDA definitely did not get in all of this, as far as the pipe tobacco side of things go, none of this would be considered high volume production. None of it. The biggest company in terms of volume is Lane, and what they produce in terms of pipe tobacco. They probably produce about the same amount in a year that cigarette manufacturers produce in a day. So we're not going to add a bunch of chemicals, and we're not going to add a bunch of harmful chemicals of any sort to our tobaccos because they're small craft. You know, even when Lane is making 10,000 pounds of tobacco, which sounds like a huge amount to a pipe smoker, in comparison to the tobacco industry at large, 10,000 pounds is nothing. And so, you know, if the FDA had taken a look at pipe tobacco separately, they may have decided that it would be okay for us to continue innovating, but unfortunately, they tried to do everything with a broad brush so that they could do as little work as possible to accomplish what they wanted.
Well, I think that everybody understands that nobody wants kids to be smoking cigarettes or vaping,
Nope.
and we're not inhaling the tobacco, most of us anyway. And ideally, if we're doing this correctly, we're smoking it at a much lower temperature, which means that lower temperatures, less carcinogenic effects, and it is very, as you said, artisanal. You know, I think about Ronald Reagan. He lifted the restrictions on beer manufacturing, which led to an explosion of microbreweries. And you know, why can't we make the same kind of exception for pipe tobacco? That would be nice.
Anybody out there familiar with the new technology for cigarette substitution called IQOS?
I've never heard of it.
Okay. It'll be a new way for people to try smoking without real smoke, rather than vaping. Now, vaping uses fundamentally propylene glycol with flavorings in it, and then it's heated and it creates this very thick vapor. I don't even like putting propylene glycol in pipe tobacco, much less in my lungs. So I believe it's Reynolds American came up with what they call IQOS, and I can't remember what the initials mean, but what the idea is that you have a device that heats actual tobacco, but not to the point of ignition. And so it vaporizes the oils and the moisture in the tobacco, and that's what you would puff on. Do you know what that sounds suspiciously like?
Marijuana vaporizers.
And it also sounds like pipe tobacco.
Yeah, I've seen those devices. They use like very short cigarettes. You put inside, it heats it up, so you get the flavor without actually burning tobacco. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pipe tobacco is the concept of IQOS. You're not really tasting the smoke. What you taste is the tobacco underneath the burning tobacco, because the heat from the burning tobacco causes the leaf underneath to release its flavors. And
yeah, when that hot air with moisture, with water vapor passes through tobacco, it absorbs the flavor and brings it to your mouth.
Yeah, IQOS is nothing but a modernized, streamlined version of pipe smoking.
So let me ask you this question. Right now, of course, with the pandemic and the concerns for congregating in the same space and whatever, the conferences and the pipe meetings. Now my brain has stopped working. Are not happening this year, but I would imagine they could play a strong role in where we go forward, right? Like you get a bunch of people together like this group here with tons of brilliant ideas and backgrounds and connections and whatever. What do you, if you had a magic wand, Russ, to utilize that forum to take pipe smoking forward, what should we be doing?
You know, as far as socialization goes, I mean, really what you're doing right now is probably as good as you can get. Bringing people together, giving them a free opportunity to discuss what they like, what they don't like, to share what knowledge that they have. I don't know that you could come up with a format that's going to accomplish any more good for the pipe community. This is pretty much the ideal circumstance. And on top of that, doing it this way, there's also no outside influence. And I hope everybody understands what I'm about to say. But when you team up with a brick and mortar to have a live meeting in a store, they have at least some opportunity to steer the conversation. You know, they can offer you special deals, whatever, detracting a bit from the content of the meeting itself. With this, nobody has influence over what you're talking about, what you can say, or what you should promote, or anything else. This is about as free an exchange as you're going to get.
I don't know if Zach is still with us. I don't believe he's a young guy. Zach, are you there? Well, he doesn't have a gray hair on his head. And I've always said, you know, if the hipsters in Silicon Valley or LA ever caught on to this, then the price of pipe tobacco would skyrocket because the supply would virtually disappear overnight. You know, and it's like, it's hidden in plain sight, and people just don't know about it, and they're not exposed to it, and they can't appreciate it.
Well, if you've ever had the opportunity to go to a pipe show, you know that they've already found it. You'll see a lot of people that some would refer to as hipsters are definitely at those shows. It's a retro chic thing to smoke a pipe. And so, you know, you'll see a lot of vests and skinny ties and fedoras and
I'm thinking Shane Ireland.
And IPAs in the smoking tent. So they definitely have caught on. And I mean, it may not be mainstream in that community, but certainly a number of them have caught on to pipe smoking and are, when they get into something, they get into it hip deep.
I consider myself to be the oldest hipster around, so so I can straddle both worlds there.
Well, I was wearing flat caps long before hipsters came around.
We were the originals. We're the OGs of the hipster world, right here.
That's correct.
Right here. So, guys, we've got about 10 minutes or so left in the meeting. Russ, what I do is every afternoon, every Saturday about this time, I remind everyone that we have families and they're going to wonder where we are, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But so we still have about 10 minutes to go. Fellas, now's your chance to ask all those questions you've been holding on to, oh, we got somebody over here on YouTube that says, all this hipster talk. I'm only 37 and I've been smoking pipes for 20 years. I think pipe smoking attracts certain people like anything, and the only ones who truly love it will stick with it.
I totally agree.
Totally agree. Yeah.
I've got a question.
The floor is open, gentlemen. Any questions you want to throw out to Russ there?
Hey, Russ,
I got one question for a while. In regards of Orientals, why most of the blends don't say what Oriental is on it? And also I hear that most of them, when they say Turkish, it's a combination with maybe Izmir with Macedonian and something else.
Well, you actually answered your own question. The reason that they don't tell you what Orientals are in the blend is because they may not even know. Today, almost impossible to buy Oriental varietals. They cut up a combination of tobaccos and sell it as a mixture rather than selling it as Uniji or Basma or Drama. A lot of it is cut up and pre-blended. So small blenders especially aren't even sure of what tobaccos are in their Turkish tobaccos. And that's because of the way tobaccos are. If you go back 30, 40 years ago, tobaccos were all sold either individually or they were sold at auction. Then after a while, companies would, especially cigarette companies, would approach.
Oops, Russ, I apologize. I pushed your mute by accident. You're gonna have to unmute yourself there, brother.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. So what they used to do was they would auction it, and different houses would be able to buy exactly the tobacco they wanted. In later years, it became easier for cigarette companies to just go to a farmer and say, I'll buy your entire crop. And so only a small amount of the tobacco was available for the smaller buyers. And that's why you get a lot of these mixtures, because what you may be getting is the last few bales of this and the last few bales of that, and it's all mixed together. So yeah, as I said, you pretty much answered your own question, because even the blenders at times don't know what's in the mixture that they're working with.
Got it. Hey, Patrick, I noticed that you had a question. I wanted to make sure you got a chance to ask it as well there.
Yeah, hey, Russ, I know you did some years back a corn cob only blend. Is there a chance for those to come back?
They'll be back. It's a packaging change. The Missouri Meerschaum pouch tobaccos, we had to get the pouches from a different source. So they're going to be released, I believe, again toward the end of this month. So there will be the 4 original blends: American Patriot, Missouri Pride, Great Dane, and Country Gentleman. They'll be coming back as soon as we receive, or the factory receives, the new pouches.
Excellent. Yeah, I just want to add something to what Russ said earlier about the Oriental tobaccos. Well, from my experience, except for Cornland Deal Izmir ribbon, the only pure varietal of any Oriental I can buy in a whole leaf. I was able to get some whole leaf Izmir, some whole leaf Samsun. Occasionally, some others become available, like some Macedonian or Yaniji, but that's almost non-existent now. And also, I found very interesting hybrid semi-oriental from Moldova. It's some kind of hybrid of oriental tobacco with something else, probably Virginian, judging by the taste. It's much larger leaf, but it has flavor somewhat similar to Izmir.
Yeah, to expound on that a little bit more, about 5 years ago, I had done a favor for someone, and they were located in Greece, and they said, if there's anything I can ever do for you, just ask. So I asked them to see if they could track down a source for Xanthi for me. And I got an email back 3 or 4 days later telling me that they had asked somebody to investigate purchasing Xanthi. The person went out and tried to get some information. And that evening when they got home, the Greek police showed up at his apartment and grilled him on why he wanted to know about buying tobacco. So I don't think the Greek government really likes the tobacco industry.
Things could be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, DDR, I just want to share this parting observation. You know, we sheltered in place back in March. I'm a teacher. We've been teaching remotely. We started this year teaching remotely. They've allotted all of our periods 75 minutes to teach. Nobody is teaching more than 40 minutes online. I keep my sessions to 30 minutes. We keep all our staff meetings to 30 minutes because Zoom fatigue is a real phenomenon. And I think it's a testament that we can be in a meeting for 2 hours and there's no such Zoom fatigue. So I think that is just a testament to pipe smoking and the pipe smoking community.
This is actually to follow that train of thought, that Zoom fatigue or any other kind of meeting fatigue has to do with relevance to the group, right? So you get a bunch of kids in a classroom and, you know, we have a curriculum that you have to present, and but it's a teacher-centered curriculum or a district-centered curriculum, and the kids don't have any input on it, right? But here, like you say, we're in a community where everybody has an interest. There is a relevance to this. And, you know, like it's Einstein again. It says, you know, when a man talks to a pretty woman, you know, an hour can seem like a second, but you put your hand on a hot stove and a second can seem like an hour. That's relativity. So, you know, relatively speaking, this is a wonderful. Like I say all the time, I look forward to my Saturday afternoons when I can spend time with you guys, because you're really amazing and you keep the interest high. I want to again do my job to draw to a close here and say thank you to everybody. Over there on YouTube, there's a bunch of questions that didn't get asked, and I apologize to you over there on YouTube about that. But here's the thing. So Russ is online on YouTube. There's pipesandcigars.com YouTube channel. And what I would recommend is you go to some of Russ's videos over there and ask those same questions. They pop up, they notify whoever's watching in the YouTube channel, and you know, cross your fingers, those questions will work their way back to Russ and you'll get those answers. Or, Russ, would you come back and be our guest again?
Well, certainly I'll be glad to do that. And actually what might make it easier is every Thursday I do a Facebook Live now. If you go to the most recent Facebook Live on the PNC channel on Facebook, there are always comments alongside the video. You can drop your questions in there, and I will go back in and I'll answer those questions as I get the opportunity.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Russ, I really learned so much today. It's just been really terrific. I don't like to speak for the group, but I think that I get a sense from everybody's questions and whatnot that we all really appreciate that you've been here. I want to give a shout out to Tim Heineck for helping make this possible. I really, I love how the group is taking ownership of the events that we have. And so all y'all, you're amazing. I'm gonna chase you all out. Go back and kiss your wife and kids. Do what you need to do. I think it's cocktail hour somewhere, right? Anyway, be safe this week. I look forward to seeing you guys next Saturday. Russ, once again.
Thank you, Russ. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Russ.
Thanks for
Russ, it
inviting
was
me.
great to see you again. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
Be well, guys.
Sure.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.